Every single day, thousands of golfers step onto a driving range, slice a golf ball deep into the trees, and immediately pull out their smartphones.
Yeah, it's a classic driving range reflex.
Right. They set the phone up on a bag stand, hit another ball, and then they scroll through that slow motion video, like frame by frame.
Oh, I've seen it a million times.
They look at this flat screen, point to their elbow, and say, there it is, my arm is bent. If I just tuck that in, I'll hit it straight. But according to the latest data in 3D biomechanics, every single one of those players is actively being lied to by their own camera.
They absolutely are. We are basically using two-dimensional illusions to try and fix a highly complex three-dimensional physics equation.
Which is wild.
It is a massive blind spot in the sport. And speaking to you as someone who has spent years as a golf professional and, as a journalist covering modern performance analysis systems, I can tell you firsthand that this traditional, purely visual method of coaching is becoming completely obsolete. Relying on your eyes or just a standard camera lens to diagnose a swing flaw is just no longer viable at a professional level.
Wow.
We're living through a fundamental shift, really, where the entire industry is being forced to move from a world of guessing to a world of absolute objective measurement.
Which is exactly our mission for this deep dive, because whether you listening right now are maybe a seasoned golf coach trying to scale your business or a scratch golfer chasing that elusive perfect round.
Or even just someone who wants to break 90.
Exactly. Or even just someone endlessly fascinated by the physics of human performance, you really need to understand this data-driven transformation. So today we are exploring the advanced golf biomechanics and performance system, which is called eCoach 360 degrees.
Yeah, the eCoach 360 system.
Right. It's an extensive 58-lesson certification course created by Henrik Jensch, and it basically dismantles 100 years of standard golf instruction.
It really does, because it attacks the foundational premise of how we even view movement. I mean, to understand this biomechanical revolution, the curriculum demands that we first just totally abandon the idea that a golf swing is a series of static poses.
Right, like positions you try to memorize.
Exactly. For decades, traditional instruction has treated the golf swing like a flip book. You have position A at setup, position B at the top of the swing, and position C at impact. You look at a picture of a tour pro in position B, and you just try to mimic it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we aren't treating the swing like a series of photographs to copy, how should we be looking at it?
Well, we need to think about energy.
So instead of a flip book, it sounds like we need to think of the body more like a whip. Like when you crack a bullwhip, you don't think about the position of the leather in the middle of the air.
No, of course not.
You snap the handle stops, and that energy just ripples down the length of the whip until it breaks the sound barrier at the tip.
That is a much better way to visualize it, yeah.
Yeah.
The course specifically refers to this as the kinematic chain.
The kinematic chain, got it.
Right. The human body in a golf swing is a dynamic, interconnected system where the pelvis, the thorax...
Which is like your upper chest and rib cage area.
Yes, exactly. The pelvis, the thorax, the arms, and the club are all interacting sequentially. The swing is an energy transfer. You push against the ground pushes back, and you transfer that energy up through your pelvis.
Up into the thorax.
Right, into your thorax, out to your arms, and finally into the club head.
But wait, hold on. Let me push back on that for a second. If my hands are wide open at impact, and I am missing the ball 50 yards into the woods, how does looking at the whole chain change anything?
What?
Because if my hands are open, shouldn't a coach just look at that and tell me to close my hands?
What's fascinating here is how this system trains professionals to identify the root causes of a poor swing, rather than just treating the symptoms. A flaw at impact, like your open club face, is very rarely the actual problem.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It is almost always a necessary compensation for an energy leak that happened much earlier in the kinematic chain.
A necessary compensation. You're telling me my body is actually doing the right thing by leaving the club face wide open, because that sounds completely counterintuitive.
I know, but think about the physics of the movement. Let's say during your transition from the backswing to the downswing, your pelvis fails to rotate toward the target.
Okay, so my hips just sort of freeze.
Right, they just stall out. But your upper body and the club are still moving at, 80 or 90 miles per hour.
Oh, wow.
Your brain inherently knows that your body is completely out of sequence.
Yeah.
If you didn't do anything with your hands at that exact millisecond, you would swing the club right past the ball and miss it entirely.
You just whiff.
Exactly. So to even make contact, your hands instinctively flip or stall out, leaving the face open.
So the hands are just trying to save the shot at the last possible second because the hips failed 2 seconds ago.
Exactly. Now imagine a traditional coach sees your hands flipping on a video screen. They say, stop flipping your hands, you need to hold that wrist angle.
Which makes sense if you only look at the hands.
Right. But if you follow their advice and freeze your hands, but you still have that same stalled pelvis, you are going to whiff the ball completely. You've basically taken away the player's natural survival mechanism for that swing.
Oh, man.
You had to fix the root cause, which is the pelvis rotation. And fixing that then organically allows the hands to fix themselves.
That reframes the entire concept of taking a golf lesson. I mean, you are trying to cure a symptom, the hands, when the actual disease is in the pelvis.
Yourselves.
Which naturally begs a massive question. If the hands are just a symptom, why have we spent a century obsessing over them?
Well, it's a technology problem, really.
Right. And this brings us to the most disruptive concept in the source material, which is how human perception and basic camera lenses completely deceive us.
Yeah, we obsessed over the hands because that's what was easiest to see on a 2D screen.
Yeah.
But the eCoach 360 system makes it explicitly clear that 2D visual perception is incredibly misleading.
Because we trust our eyes too much.
We do. We have this deep-seated belief that video is objective truth. But a 2D camera doesn't capture reality. It captures a projection of reality onto a flat plane.
Right.
And that projection is heavily influenced by camera geometry, height, alignment, and lens distortion.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you hear lens distortion and you think of like funhouse mirrors at a carnival.
Yeah, exactly.
But break that down for me anatomically. How does the camera angle on a standard smartphone physically create a false image of my golf swing?
Let's use camera height as an example. Imagine you set your phone on a tripod to record your swing from behind, looking down the target line.
Okay, pretty standard driving range setup.
Right. If that lens is positioned at the height of your belt buckle, and you pause the video when your club is parallel to the ground, the shaft of the club will appear to intersect your body at a certain point.
Makes sense.
Now, move that exact same camera up to the height of your shoulders without changing anything else. If you film the exact same swing, the club shaft will suddenly appear to be on a completely different, much steeper plane.
Even though the club is in the exact same physical space in the real world.
Yes, because the angle of the lens in relation to the object has changed. The 2D projection changes.
Wow.
Or consider alignment. If your camera is resting on a golf bag just 2 inches to the right of your hands, the parallax effect makes the club head appear drastically inside or behind your hands during the takeaway.
So it looks like you're pulling the club way behind you.
Exactly. A coach looks at that video, says your takeaway is too far inside, and forces you to change your mechanics. But your takeaway was actually perfectly on plane. The camera was just 2 inches off center.
That is terrifying for anyone who has spent hours in their backyard trying to perfect their swing based on an iPad video.
It is.
You are basically self-diagnosing a biomechanical issue using a warped mirror.
And that is exactly why teaching without objective 3D measurement is no longer sufficient. To truly understand what the body is doing, you have to track motion in 3 dimensions.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, the curriculum insists on using concepts like the 6 degrees of freedom, often referred to as 6DOF, and distinguishing between linear motion and angular motion.
Let's pause on that terminology for a second, because 6 degrees of freedom sounds like something an aerospace engineer uses to, I don't know, land a rocket.
It does sound complicated, yeah.
For the listener trying to understand their own body, what does that actually mean when we are looking at a golfer's pelvis?
If we connect them to the bigger picture, an object in 3D space, whether it's an airplane or a human pelvis, can move in 6 distinct ways simultaneously.
Okay.
First, it can move along 3 linear axes. It can sway left and right. It can thrust forward and backward, and it can lift up and down. That is your linear motion.
Okay, so that's 3 degrees right there. Left, right, forward, back, up, down.
Right. But it can also rotate around those 3 axes.
Oh.
It can turn left and right. It can tilt forward and backward, and it can side bend. That is your angular motion. Together, those make up the 6 degrees of freedom.
So during a golf swing?
During a golf swing, your pelvis is doing all 6 of those things at the exact same time. It's swaying, thrusting, lifting, turning, tilting, and bending.
And a flat phone camera is taking all 6 of those complex, simultaneous movements and just mashing them together into a single flat shadow.
Precisely. You might see a player's shoulder drop on video and assume they are tilting too much. But in 3D space, they might not be tilting at all. They might just be rotating heavily while shifting their weight laterally.
Man, that changes everything.
It does. The 2D video merges those variables. You cannot separate them without a 3D coordinate system establishing a true zero position and proper reference lines.
So what does this all mean? Having established that traditional video is basically lying to us and that we are dealing with this highly complex 6 degree of freedom physics equation, how does a coach practically apply this?
That's the real test, right?
Yeah, because data is completely useless if you can't translate it into a better golf shot. How do we move from this theory into measurable performance?
This is where the curriculum transitions from diagnosis to application, specifically through what it calls task-based biomechanics.
That's space. Okay.
The system trains coaches to build structured, repeatable improvement models based on the specific physical task the golfer is trying to achieve. Because hitting a golf ball isn't just one task.
Right. I mean, hitting a driver off a plastic tee is a completely different physical requirement than hitting an iron off the turf. The setup geometry has to be different.
It absolutely does. The task with the driver is to hit up on the ball to maximize distance and reduce spin. The task with an iron is to hit down on the ball to compress it and control trajectory.
Sure.
Old school coaching might just say, move the ball further up in your stance for a driver. But task-based biomechanics measures the specific anatomical relationships required to achieve that upward strike.
Okay, so what specific relationships are we measuring there? Give me the actual anatomical mechanism.
We are looking closely at variables like pelvis versus thorax rotation, and specifically side bend versus turn.
Okay.
Let's focus on side bend for a second. Side bend dictates your low point control.
Let me jump in really quick just for clarity. Low point is just the absolute lowest point of the club head's arc before it starts coming back up, right?
Correct. You want the low point to be in front of the ball with an iron, so you hit the ball, then the grass.
Right.
With a driver, you want the low point to be behind the ball so the club is traveling upward when it makes contact. And your low point is directly dictated by the tilt of your thorax, basically your rib cage.
Okay, tracking with you.
If you side bend your thorax away from the target at setup, you shift your body's center of mass backward. That physical shift naturally moves the bottom of your swing arc behind the golf ball.
Oh, wow. So if a coach just tells a player to move the ball forward but doesn't measure and adjust the side bend of their rib cage, the player's center of mass is still in the wrong place. They are going to chop down on the driver, pop the ball straight up in the air, and have absolutely no idea why.
And that right there is the difference between subjective opinion and objective measurement. A biomechanics coach measures the side bend in degrees.
Very hard data.
If the data shows the thorax is completely vertical, the coach knows the low point will be wrong. They don't guess. They adjust the geometry, verify the new measurement, and the player instantly hits up on the ball. It emphasizes efficiency and total precision.
But, this raises an important question, though, about the aesthetic of a golf swing.
This raises an important question, actually, because people always wonder about how a swing looks.
Right. Because if everything is based on these strict mathematical 3D measurements, does that mean every single golfer is supposed to look exactly the same?
Not at all.
I think every sports fan knows there are some incredibly weird-looking swings out on the professional tour. Guys with massive looping backswings, or players who look like they're jumping out of their shoes at impact.
Oh, yeah, some of them are wild.
Visually, some of them look like a disaster.
And this is perhaps the most crucial distinction the eCoach 360 system makes, separating what we call a functional variation from an actual biomechanical error.
Functional variation, okay.
A purely visual coach looks at a quirky, looping backswing and immediately tries to fix it so it looks pretty. They want the player to look like a textbook photograph.
But if they are on the professional tour, clearly that weird swing is working.
Exactly, because through the lens of 3D kinematics, aesthetics don't matter. Energy transfer matters.
Right.
You might hook up a player with a wild looping swing to a 3D tracking system and realize that their ground reaction forces are off the charts. You might see that their sequence, from pelvis to thorax to arms, fires with perfect timing.
So even if their arms are taking this bizarre detour through the air on the way back, if the 6 degrees of freedom metrics show that the energy is transferring perfectly into the club head at impact, you just leave it alone.
You leave it alone. That is a functional variation. It's an aesthetic quirk that actually works highly efficiently for that specific player's anatomy.
That's fascinating.
An actual biomechanical error, on the other hand, is a movement that mathematically disrupts the energy transfer, causes a loss of speed, or puts the player at risk of injury.
Right.
Understanding the difference between a weird swing that works and a normal-looking swing that bleeds energy is what elevates someone from just being a golf instructor to being a true performance specialist.
That fundamentally changes the entire business of coaching. It really takes all the ego out of it.
It completely removed the guesswork.
Right, because you aren't forcing a signature method onto a student. You aren't pointing at a screen and saying, don't do that because I don't like how it looks.
Exactly.
You are diagnosing a holistic system, building a measured training plan based on their unique physical capabilities, and tracking their improvement in a definitive, scalable way.
And that is why this certification is so important for the industry. It establishes a professional baseline. You know, in my work analyzing sports performance, I see countless trends come and go.
Sure.
But physics is not a trend. Biomechanics is the underlying truth of human movement. The eCoach 360 system provides a structured map for diagnosing swings using actual tour-level movement patterns rather than just visual guesswork.
It's incredible.
If you understand the variables, you can track the progress definitively, which transforms long-term player development.
It really feels like we're leaving the dark ages of sports instruction.
We really are.
So, just to summarize the massive shift we've explored today, 3D kinematics is no longer just a niche science reserved for elite tour players in multi-million-dollar labs.
Oh, everywhere now.
It is the essential new baseline. Moving from symptom treating based on warped 2D video to root cause analysis via precise 3D measurement is the new standard.
Absolutely.
If you are teaching or learning without measuring those 6 degrees of freedom, you're essentially just guessing in the dark.
And in the modern landscape of sports performance, guessing just isn't good enough anymore. The physics are established, the data is readily available, and the human body is ready to be optimized if you just know how to read the measurements.
If you like this concept and want to follow this journey consistently, make sure to subscribe to our channel.
There's always more to unpack when we look at the intersection of hard data and human athletic potential.
For sure. And I'm going to leave you, the listener, with this one final thought to ponder today. We've just spent all this time breaking down how our own eyes and the basic camera lenses we carry in our pockets have been completely deceiving us about the physics of the golf swing for decades.
Yeah.
If 2D visual perception is that fundamentally flawed when it comes to hitting a stationary golf ball, what other everyday physical movements or dynamic athletic skills, like, say, a tennis serve or baseball pitch,
Oh, absolutely.
are we completely misunderstanding simply because we are only viewing them in 2 dimensions? Think about that the next time you confidently diagnose a problem on a slow-motion video. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.